Hi, I'm Ross, Lifetime Natural Bodybuilder. Happy New Year. Hope you had a nice Christmas break despite the COVID restrictions. Unfortunately for me and many in the UK now, it's tier 4, so the gyms are closed, which is extremely frustrating. You know, for myself, training is an absolute necessity. I can't imagine life without training. I've been training for so long, I can't remember what life was like without training. So, you know, whatever equipment you have available, just make sure that you maintain some form of training to, at the very least, maintain your physical and mental health going forwards. So luckily for me, I have access to some gym equipment. So I'll do some videos in the near future showcasing exactly what I'm doing in the gym with the limited equipment I have available and the limited time that I have to actually get the training in. But in the meantime, I thought I'd do a video about Chris Bumstead and showcasing his physique and the differences between 2019 and 2020 and how you can apply that to your own training, your own kind of recovery and philosophies as a natural bodybuilder, and hopefully make some decent progress. So we're going to look at his back, and in particular the back double bicep shot, which shows some fantastic progression in that 1 year from 2019 to 2020. Before I start though, if I could ask you to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the videos, don't forget to give it a like and check out my Instagram as well. The link is in the description box below. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is that his genetics are obviously far superior than that of most people's in his ability to build muscle mass at such an early age. Even in his late teens, early 20s, super heavily muscled, which is no easy feat. And then, you know, now only 25, still classic Olympia champion. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with in this division for many years to come, I'm sure. His shape and structure are also extremely good genetically. You know, he's got the gifts to excel at this sport, basically. That being said, even if he had bad genetics, it doesn't mean you can't make fantastic progress. So this should motivate you. It shouldn't discourage you. If it discourages you, then you really need to reconsider your outlook on training and your bodybuilding journey. For me, it motivates me knowing that someone with such a fantastic physique can still make really good progress in a year. You know, irrespective of whether they're on gear or not, it doesn't matter. They still have to train, and I want to know how they're able to do that and then apply some of that to my own training, and that's what you should be doing as a natural bodybuilder. I think this is a problem with gym culture in general today. The importance of training is often downplayed. People would rather talk about drugs. You know, when they see a good physique, it's gear, 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 without really analysing how they're training. And of course, drugs are important for these top tier physiques in determining how they can look, but training will always be more important. We mustn't forget that. You know, you've got youngsters coming to the gym these days wanting to get right on the gear straight away without understanding the basics of training, obsessed with this notion of this genetic limit, and it's just used as an excuse to take steroids. If you want to take steroids, then go for it, but don't claim it's because of the fact that you've reached your genetic limit. There's no such thing. That's besides the point though, a whole nother topic. So you can see here we've got 4 pictures, comparisons from 2017, 18, 19 and 20. And there's subtle yet noticeable improvements from 2017, 18 and 19. He's holding the pose a little bit differently in 2019. He's leaning forward a little bit more, which perhaps adds the illusion of a slightly downsized physique. You're not able to see his delts as much. His lats are popping a little bit less, perhaps because of that position. That being said, we're able to see here with a close-up comparison, there is a clear difference in his physique. It's not just the way he's holding the pose. That is important, as I'll get into a little bit later though. So we'll work from the calves up. Calves are probably the same, maybe a little bit downsized, hard to tell because of the lighting, but they still look good, you know, fairly developed. Hamstrings are thicker for sure and slightly more conditioned, very slightly. Quads are definitely better. There's more flare coming out from the side. Glutes are better, far better, much bigger and more striated. Lower back is hard to tell because of the way he's holding the pose. He's leaning back a little bit more, so it hides some of that lower back detail. His shoulders and arms are more developed, especially the bicep and forearms. And the most noticeable change is the back and the lats in particular, right underneath the armpits. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously, he's bigger. He's carrying more muscle mass. There's no denying that. But the way he's holding that pose makes a big difference as well. So he's leaning back a lot more, and you can tell by a few things. His upper chest is poking out a little bit more at the top. There's also a lot less distance between his trunks and his rear delts. You know, it's less distance compared to 2019, so he's closing that angle by leaning back, which makes the upper back look a lot better in terms of the delts and the lats and what have you, but you lose some of that lower back detail. I think it's a worthy trade-off though. It makes his physique from the back look a lot more impressive, a lot more powerful and heavily muscled overall. So we're going to watch a snippet now of him talking about practicing his posing, his back double bicep, and how his coach Ian Valliere had directed him how to hold that particular pose.
Ian completely fucked around with my back double bicep and changed everything. So it's pretty new and awkward to me. It doesn't feel right, something I'm trying to get used to. So this is me still trying to get used to the pose. This is some fucking behind the scenes access right now. You're gonna have to rewatch that video. What he told me to do was normally I get into my back double and I really rotate and I try and bring my arm back because I feel like I'm flexing my back more like that, and I lean farther back. And while that can make kind of my rhomboids upper back look a little bit better, it makes my lower lats sink into my back and get rid of all the density in that. And sometimes it looks better in my off season because I hold a lot of fat in my lower back, so I can't really tell when they're popping or not. They're always just not there. But as I'm getting leaner and leaner, that's my last place to lose fat. It'll look a lot different. So it's just something I gotta get used to and like tweak perfectly because the back's gotta improve this year.
So what he's saying there doesn't entirely transition into what we're seeing on this shot during the Olympia competition. Whilst I agree that he's probably pulling his elbows further forwards than the year prior, which helps pop the lats a little bit more, and you can clearly see it in the video where he's pulling the elbows, just very, very subtle, just pulling them forwards. You can practice that in the mirror, do a front double bicep, and you'll see the difference in your lats, the way they kind of flare out. When you pull your elbows forward and down slightly, you can really get your lats to kind of pop. When you pull your elbows back, it looks completely different. And the same rules apply for the back double bicep. However, he's leaning back a lot more than he did in the year prior, so they've obviously had a few posing sessions, worked out the best look for him, and kind of come to the conclusion that he should lean back more than he did in the prior year, pull the elbows forward a little bit more to pop the lats, and I guess he's kind of scrunching the back a little bit less. Hard to tell though, because he's just carrying so much more muscle mass in that area. That's what we're going to talk about next, the most important aspect, the training. First and foremost, I thought I'd share a snippet of information about the drug protocol, the off-season drug protocol, which is extremely moderate, which goes to show you the potency of these hormones, but more importantly, the genetics and the genetic superiority. You know, there are many, many gym rats. Most gym rats would take more than this. They don't look like Chris Bumstead. So yeah, I'll play that now.
I mean,
well, what do you do? Like, what's a typical cycle for you now?
Chris, in the off season, if he's doing more than 500 milligrams of test by itself, that's an aggressive off season.
Really? Wow.
And no, he's never done growth hormone in his life. I'll speak for that for him. Never touched it.
Wow.
Never used it. Doesn't use insulin. Never has used it. He's using no drugs other than a half cc a test twice a week. That's it.
They would obviously take more during the dieting phases, but yeah, for the most part, people that take that or even more in most cases, and most gym rats would take, as I said, much more than that, are not going to look like Chris Bumstead. Then again, they're not training like Chris Bumstead either. So let's not get carried away with the drugs and the genetics and use that as an excuse. Let's look at how he actually trains, how serious he takes his training and his recovery. So the first thing I noticed was that in late 2019 he switched from a bro split to a high frequency push-pull leg workout. So he was training every muscle group once per week, changed it to twice per week, and obviously for someone that's been doing a bro split for quite some time, I think he said he'd been doing it since the beginning, since he started training, then your body's going to be very, very sensitive to that increase in frequency. It's probably going to yield some good returns during an off-season. For sure, the volume might be a little bit lower in terms of the amount of sets you're doing for back each session, but over the week, it should be the same or perhaps even more. Notice the exclusion of regular deadlifts. He was a big deadlifter prior to this, I believe. He's got some rack pulls in there, and interestingly enough, some arm exercises in between some of the back movements he does. Assuming that the grips you use for your back exercises are comfortable and not too hard on the forearms, or you can use wraps, and I don't see this to be an issue.
I can still make changes I've adapted my training. I'm not as strong probably as I used to be. I don't deadlift squat 600, 700 pounds every week,
Right.
but I'm trying a lot different, smarter. I feel good. I feel healthy, and my body's still improving. So I wouldn't change anything.
During the COVID pandemic, the training was taking place during a basement, so it was very varied in what they were doing. He'd moved away from that prior program. Deadlifts featured every now and again, it seemed, from what I could tell, but mostly at the end of a workout where you're already kind of primed for feeling the lats and traps a lot more. You're just more connected to that muscle. Remember, there's a big difference between doing deadlift to build muscle tissue, to feel it in the lats more, and to build strength. For strength, you really want to kind of use a stop-start technique where you have to break inertia each rep. But for building muscle, it makes sense to kind of do away with that and make those first 3 inches of the movement easier, so you can get more reps out on a given weight. So in general, most of the deadlift work was done sparingly, either on hamstring day or after a few back exercises or at the end of the back workout, and generally for high reps. There are a few heavier sessions he did, I think in general, a lot less than what he'd done in the years prior. For the most part, though, his back training seemed to comprise of rowing and pull-down movements. He also talks about recovery and using an ice bath on a consistent basis, and consuming more food in and around that back training day. This is a very good technique to utilise to help build up a weak body part, consuming more calories around that session. So he would often have sushi after a session, a really nice, easy way of getting a lot of calories in, and some high sugar snacks prior to the session. This is something I've always advocated over the years. It's a really, really good technique to kind of help you bring up those lagging areas. It's something that he used. So we'll get into his training now. This is an example training session of a few months prior to the Olympia, and he's obviously in full swing, and it's a very intense training session, so we'll break it down now. So this first exercise is a chest supported row, barbell row, and he's using these attachments to make the exercise feel a lot more comfortable. Force reps as well from his training partner, which helps him to go past that point of failure where he would have to stop if he was training on his own, which is really important. As well with back training, I will say that it's very important to pick an exercise that feels comfortable, and sometimes those kind of attachments, if you're lucky enough that your gym has them, will be really, really helpful in increasing that mind to muscle connection, where your elbows and your wrists don't feel so niggly. The next exercise, again, chest supported row from a slightly different angle. And he's using more or less a rest pause style to increase the amount of work he does in a given time. So he's using a weight that he could probably do maybe 7 or 8 reps with before failure, and he's repeating sets of 5 with that. He's resting about 10 to 20 seconds in between each set, and I think he does 3 or 4 sets in total. So that's 15 or 20 reps with a weight that you might only be able to manage 7 or 8 reps with before failure for that one set. So it's another way of increasing your work capacity within a given time period. Then he does that same exercise again for a giant drop set, 4 plates, 3 plates and 2 plates. And he continues the set on as well, I do notice, with partial reps for some of these sets as well. So he's really just keeping the tension on the back at all times, even if the range of motion decreases. And you can notice with his elbows here, he's pulling quite high, so he's really hitting the upper back, the traps, the rear delts, the rhomboids, lats to a certain extent, of course, but he's really focusing on that upper area, and that really comes through in the rear double bicep shot that we looked at earlier. So now he's changed the angle again, he's coming a little bit lower, perhaps focusing on the lower lats a little bit more, and he's using force reps on this exercise, so his training partner is enabling him to continue the set on for longer than he would be able to otherwise if he was training on his own. A very important technique in my eyes. If you were training on your own, the only way you could emulate this in one continuous set would be to use looser forms. You do as many reps as you can with strict form, and then you continue that set on with slightly looser form, maybe leaning back a little bit more to go past that point of failure. But it's far more effective when you have a training partner. And again, the same principle here with this wacky looking machine. This is a very odd machine. I can imagine the focus would be a lot on the lower lats as well because of the angle of the bar in relation to the handles. A really strange machine. It's basically a T-bar, but the bar goes out obviously a lot longer than usual, and that makes a difference in how it would feel. Again, he's doing multiple sets, 3 plates and 2 plates, using his spotter to increase the intensity of the exercise, to go way past that point of failure. And you can see he's quite delicate with his grip. I think this is also very important for back training. He's not even holding on with his thumb. And sometimes that can really increase the mind-to-muscle connection in the back, takes the forearms and elbows, any pain that you might get in those areas away from the exercise. That's something to bear in mind as well. Now we move on to a vertical pull down. Something to bear in mind is the handle. These are extremely good quality handles. They're very expensive, about 150 quid for one of these handles. It makes it feel a lot better. If you're lucky enough to have that in the gym, you should be using this all the time. Really good. And you see, again, he's taking that intensity to the max, and he's continuing the set on with partial reps, way past that point of failure. So he's able to continually tax the back muscles, even though he's only moving a few inches. And then to finish up, he goes for some body weight inverted row. Perfect form, and again continuing the set on, even though his range of motion decreases, he's still able to tax those back muscles with a few inches of movement. So his mind-to-muscle connection is obviously very good. He's really focusing on that area, which is something we all should be doing when it comes to back training, something I've neglected in the past, self-admittedly. Okay, so that's the video wrapped up. My take-home points would be to practice your posing. Don't be scared of trying a high-frequency training approach, especially if you've been doing something like a bro split for some time, and vice versa. It works both ways. Consume more food in and around weak body part training sessions. Take your recovery seriously. Do lots of rowing movements with great mind-to-muscle connection, and train hard, really hard. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't worry about overtraining. You'll know if you're overtraining. Keep it simple. And go get those gains. Thanks for watching, guys. If you did enjoy the video, then please give it a like. Stay strong.